This video is going to be your ultimate guide on how to actually position within high ranked games when it comes to a strategist within inside Marvel Rivals. This is going to teach you the best places to be to heal your team and support your team the best as you possibly can. So you've got some really important tips and details on how you actually want to move and position within a game. So let's add in the enemy team. So what we have here is a duelist, a strategist, a duelist, and 2 vanguards. A lot of teams tend to set up in this formation. There's a triple support meta going on, especially in the high ranked games at the moment, but I want to make it quite simple for you to understand. So we're going to choose the Invisible Woman because this is the hero in terms of strategist I've had the most time playing with, and I understand her abilities the best. On top of that, each one of these strategists are slightly different and they're all good for different types of things. And if you want that full breakdown, I've already made that video on the channel. But when it comes to positioning, there's 2 options for positioning. First of all is the back and forth. So back and forth means that you're going to be moving into your team's front line and you're going to be providing heals to your 2 vanguards potentially, or whoever's in the front line in general. And then what you're going to do is you're then going to move back into the back line again. So once you start taking some damage, you know you're low HP, you've ran out of your abilities, you're going to then go back into the back line again. So you're going to kind of go forward, heal up this player, deal some damage, and then move back after you've ran out of your abilities. Now, the other way to play as a support player or as a strategist in general is to play inside your team, and this is kind of playing between the lines, and I've seen a lot of pro players do this as well. And this is when you're playing in the center of your team and you're providing heals here, you're providing heals here, and you're basically just healing up the whole entire team essentially is what you're doing. So you're playing in the center as the centerpiece of your team, providing heals all over the place, and just basically keeping an eye on what's happening around your team. And this is probably going to be the healer that's got the most heals within the game, and there's some particular healers when it comes to actual strategists that do this the best, but you can do this with all of them. And this is the best when you have 2 healers. Now, one of them can be doing the inside strategy whilst the other one is doing the back and forth. That is the way you actually want to play this. And also this is probably the safest option as well. So if you're struggling as a support, this one is the easiest one to do, and this one is the one that you want to default to if you lose a strategist in your team. So if your strategist dies and you are basically doing the back and forward play, you want to then default to this one until your strategist returns back. Now, in doing these positionings, what you're actually looking for here is the best and to maintain line of sight of your team the whole entire time. So like I said, the line of sight of your team is, if you're playing this kind of yo-yo player, then what you want to do is you want to have line of sight of your vanguards, because that is the main players that are going to be within your range. And because you're going to be outputting some damage from time to time as well, you're also acting as a bit of a DPS at that point in time when you're going forward. As soon as you start taking damage, you're coming back. Then when it comes to this strategist, so obviously there's 2 different strategists here, then this guy's job is to keep line of sight on the whole entire team. So not only the people that you're healing up as well, it also needs to be on all of the rest of the team that is available. So how do we deal with an enemy dive? Now, 90% of the time when an enemy dives, it's usually a DPS or a vanguard, of course, and they're diving into the back lines to try and kill either you if you're in this position, or it'll be this support, or it'll be this DPS. So it's going to be one of these kind of 3 players. Now, you want to be back in this position. So that's, first of all, you want to be in this position here. This is the most safest position for you and for your team as well. And what you want to do is kind of communicate with this DPS or this DPS. It doesn't really matter, whatever one's closest to you, that this is the target now. So this diver, Black Panther, Spider-Man, whoever it is in this position. Your job is to provide them heals and back up a little bit more so that they can win this fight easily. So that's what you're trying to do, because a DPS versus DPS fight is very fair, but it's unfair because they've displaced themselves out of their own team And what you're to do is to keep your teammate alive so they can win this fight. That is your job. Your job is not to help fight. Your main job is to keep them alive so they can do the fight. So let's say now you're on some high ground as a healer, which is actually great because, as we mentioned before, line of sight is very important. So now what you do is you actually have line of sight over your whole entire team. So your angle is now widened so you can support your whole team. Now, when it comes to players, I mean, for example, if we have a DPS here who's dived in to this team, your job is not to chase this player and provide him with heals now, because you're in a perfect position still to support the rest of your team. And I see a lot of people going and leaving their team to then support one player who's going off rogue doing a crazy activity. But you want to stay where most of your team is so you can still support them. They can get a health pack, and if they still want to get healed enough, they can position themselves back in where they're supposed to be. But you don't want to force yourself off of a good position to then help this single one player where you should be supporting the rest of the team. So as a support player, you need to know when to reposition all the time. And sometimes you need to reposition to be back inside your team, as I mentioned before. So back in this position here, so that you can be here if maybe your support dies. You're needing to be on the move constantly because A, you don't want to be near divers because you're likely to die anyway very quickly. B, you want to be able to support your team as much as you possibly can. And C, you have very low health, so even if you get shot by a DPS, anything, you're going to struggle to stay alive. So you want to be on the move constantly, finding the best positions to be in. Now, the main time as a support when you should be forced to move back is when your front line moves back. And you need to move back with your front line as well. So you need to move back with them because that means your lines are moving. And you need to move back or forward with them, of course, as well if they're pushing forward. So let's say our whole team's dead now, and all we have is a Vanguard, which is holding the front line, and our DPS, which will also now be holding the front line as well. Then as they're moving back, because they will be retreating, especially in high ranked games, they're not going to stay here. They're going to wait for the team to come back to support. You should be moving back with them. So you have to be moving back. If the Doctor Strange or Magneto that's holding the front line is retreating back, you have to retreat back with your team and keep providing that support until you get the rest of your team back to then push forward again. What we're going to do now is actually spectate how this works actually in game. So we're watching the #1 Mantis in all of Marvel Rivals, and we're going to see how she actually does all these things that we've mentioned. So right now she's in the back line healing up the team. So as you can see here, she does output some damage, as you can see from range, because Mantis does have good range attacks, and Mantis is like a DPS healer. So she's actually really good at outputting damage, and that is in our other video, which we'll leave a link at the end of this one. So a lot of the fight happens here, so we want to get a good angle on this part where we can see our Mantis and what she's actually doing. So as you can see, she's pushing forward, supporting the two Vanguards, or the two kind of frontline players essentially, and then she's backing up as she's taking damage. So now she's backed up again, then she'll be pushing forward once again. So now the Hulk's the front line, as you can see with the Storm. That is the front line of this team. Hulk's doing his thing, and then Mantis is back in again. As you can see here, she's back into this fight again. And the Cloak and Daggers kind of stayed back for the most part. So as you can see here, the Cloak and Daggers not really entered the fight too much. But again, every time this front line moves, our Mantis moves with it. And every time the front line moves back, our Mantis also moves back as well with the team. So it's very good to see from this angle how she keeps moving in and out constantly. And whilst the Cloak and Daggers acting as that main healing support player, as you can see there. So the Cloak and Dagger is the one that stays back the most, whilst the Mantis and Luna Snow push forward to help the team. The front and back move is actually happening in the middle of the team, which is actually slightly different to what we've mentioned, that you can do it basically around the outside of your team as well. But you can also do it this way too. So basically she's healing up, but as you can see, she's mainly focused her heals on anything that's in front of her. She's not healed up anything behind or anything of this nature. Now that Groot ult was actually really good from the opposite team there, but like I said, all the healing that she's outputting is towards the Hulk and the Storm that were directly in front. So they've died now and they've spawned back in, so it'll be very interesting to see how they move to try and get the objective back. So as you can see here, the other team's kind of pushing forward. They're also pushing with their front line again. Bucky's in the front line now. So he's the DPS in the front line, and the Cloak and Dagger is staying relatively behind that as well. Luna Snow's kind of jumped in because she's got her ult as well, so the ult is then pushing this team forward. And as you can see now, we're pushing the other team. They're on the point. They managed to clear the whole entire team there. Team's still full health right now, so we don't need to do nothing here. I think she's maybe heard or spotted someone. So there we have it. That is how you want to position as a support player within Marvel Rivals. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe, and thank you very much for watching.